The hum of the monitors filled the narrow security room, broken only by the occasional slap of playing cards on the metal table. Nadine Carter sat in the far corner, back straight, eyes steady on the wall of surveillance screens. The flickering glow cast soft shadows across her dark skin, picking out the quiet tension in her jaw. Behind her, the guards, all men, all louder than they needed to be, erupted into another round of laughter. "Better luck next time, Jimmy," someone jeered, followed by the familiar pop of knuckles rapping a loser's forehead. Nadine didn't flinch. The room stank of coffee, old fries, and male entitlement. It had become a scent she carried home with her each night, buried deep in the collar of her uniform. She'd been here 6 months. 6 long months of watching elevators, parking lots, glass doors that never opened unless buzzed. 6 months of learning exactly how men like Bill Hart operated. The shift supervisor, former cop, big voice, bigger gut, and a smallness inside that needed someone to trample. Nadine was convenient. A woman. A black woman. And worst of all, someone who didn't shrink. "You even blink, Carter?" he barked once, striding past her with that fake swagger of someone who used to be feared. She hadn't answered. Now, from across the room, his gaze swept toward her again. She felt it. Oily, appraising, irritated that she still hadn't cracked. "You missin' the party?" he called. "Or you just like pretendin' you matter?" Laughter again. Cards slapped. A crushed soda can rolled across the floor and stopped against her boot. Nadine didn't turn. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, steady, slow. The camera on screen 3 was acting up again, static blooming at the corners. She adjusted the angle, typed a note in the log, time-stamped it. "You ever smile, sweetheart?" one of the younger guys asked from the table. "Bet you looked good once, before all that bitterness set in." The clock above the door ticked past 1:17. Lunch had ended 17 minutes ago. Nadine finally turned. Her voice was low and clear. "Lunch ended a while back." A few smirks twitched. One of the guards threw his hands up in mock surrender. "She speaks. Guess Mama's mad we're having fun." "Bill?" someone called. "You gonna let her boss us around now?" Bill leaned back in his chair, propping one foot on the edge of the table. "Carter thinks just 'cause she's got a clipboard and a jaw tighter than a banker's wallet, she's in charge." He grinned, chewing something invisible. "Ain't how it works, sweetheart. You're here to watch cameras, not run the floor." Nadine said nothing. Her gaze swept over them. The camouflage caps, the stained shirts, the smirks that knew no risk of consequence. Then back to the monitors. Silence followed. Uneasy, uncertain. Bill's chair screeched as he stood. "All right," he muttered louder now. "Break's over, boys. Let's give the queen her quiet time." One by one, they grumbled and rose, a pack of dogs slowly backing away from the fence. As they filed out, Bill lingered. His breath smelled like mustard and old cigarettes. "You keep pushing, Carter," he said quietly, "and you'll find out real quick just how replaceable you are." She didn't look at him, but when the door closed behind him, Nadine sat a little straighter. And for a moment, just a flicker, her reflection in the monitor didn't look like a security guard at all. The midday lull had settled like dust across the building. Slow elevators, idle chatter at reception, a delivery truck idling out back. Nothing on the monitors called for concern. Nadine leaned slightly forward, shifting focus from lobby cam to parking entrance. Routine. Predictable. Then she saw her. A woman, no older than 28, stepping carefully into the marble-floored lobby. Pale blue maternity dress stretched over her belly, her hand resting lightly beneath it as if reminding herself with each step. Not long now. Nadine didn't know her name, but the face was familiar. glimpsed in company memos and hallway photos. CEO's daughter, Violet McClellan. She moved slowly, expression calm but weary. Nadine's eyes narrowed. The girl paused near the elevators, one hand gripping the railing. Then something changed. A microsecond of sway, knees buckling just slightly, and Nadine sat up straight. On screen, Violet collapsed. No sound, just a sudden fold of limbs and then stillness on the lobby floor. Nadine reached for the desk radio. "Medical to front lobby, now." A long silence, then static. "What's the situation?" "She's down," Nadine said. "Unconscious, looks late third trimester." "Copy." She didn't wait for further response. Already, she saw the desk receptionist scrambling from behind her station, a man in maintenance dropping his mop. 2 minutes later, paramedics swept through the front doors. Blue uniforms, rolling bag, a stretcher parked just outside the frame. Nadine watched their movements with quiet precision. They knelt, checked pulse, blood pressure. One of them turned his head, speaking quickly to the others. Nadine couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. She recognized the body language, hesitation, doubt, the moment where textbooks end and instinct should begin. Her fingers twitched. For the first time in months, maybe years, her body remembered. Not just knowledge, but that deep muscle memory, the tension in her forearms, the quick logic mapping vital signs to decisions. She had seen this before, years ago. A woman, same age, same pressure behind the eyes, symptoms dismissed until it was almost too late. On the screen, Violet still hadn't moved. One paramedic looked toward the lobby desk, as if hoping for guidance that wasn't coming. The younger medic stood back, unsure. Nadine's hand hovered over the desk. A slow breath filled her lungs. She knew this road. She knew where it led when hesitation won. From the monitor, the pale shape of the girl on the marble floor stared back at her, and Nadine Carter realized she wasn't going to sit through this again. Nadine stood, not in anger, not in panic, but with a quiet, unstoppable certainty, the kind that lives deep in the bones of someone who's saved lives and buried a few too many of her own mistakes. She didn't ask permission. She didn't radio Bill. She stepped out from behind the monitors, through the heavy door, down the corridor, and into the elevator without a word. The descent felt slow, agonizing. She could already see the scene in her mind, the frozen uncertainty, the frantic whispers, the ticking silence that always settled in when no one knew what to do next. When the elevator doors opened, the lobby was chaos wrapped in stillness. Violet lay crumpled on the floor, her skin gray, her belly unmoving. One paramedic was pressing gently against her wrist, frowning. Another flipped through a med kit, stalling. The youngest, barely out of school by the look of him, hovered uselessly, waiting for someone else to take the lead. Receptionists stood by, pale and useless. Maintenance had vanished, and in the middle of it all, indecision. Nadine's voice cut through like steel. "Step back." The medics turned, startled. The oldest one blinked, eyes narrowing, then widening. "Carter?" His voice cracked. "Dr. Nadine Carter?" She nodded once, already kneeling. I thought you were..." "Not now, Kincaid." The other two medics looked at each other, unsure whether to object or assist. But the old man had already moved aside, eyes locked on her like a man watching someone rise from the dead. Nadine's hands were steady as she touched Violet's neck, feeling for a pulse. Weak. Thready. Her fingers pressed lightly on the girl's swollen belly. She didn't like what she felt. "Her pressure's crashing," she said. "Breath sounds on the right." The younger medic hesitated. "Shallow. Almost nothing." "Tension pneumo," she muttered. Probably from a ruptured bleb, babies pressing high, lungs compressed. She held out her hand. I need a 14 gauge and a large bore syringe. Now. Kincaid snapped into motion. Back of the kit, left side. The younger medic fumbled it out, handing it to her with trembling fingers. Nadine found the intercostal space by feel, 2 fingers down from the clavicle, mid-clavicular line, and in one smooth, practiced motion, plunged the needle in. There was a faint hiss, then a soft gasp. Violet's chest rose, slow but steady. Nadine closed her eyes for just a moment, letting the rhythm settle in her ears like music she hadn't heard in years. When she looked up, Kincaid was staring at her, tears clinging to the corners of his weathered eyes. I thought you were gone, he whispered. Apparently not. And from across the lobby, a low voice barked, What the hell do you think you're doing, Carter? Bill Hart had arrived, red-faced, furious. But she didn't turn. Her hands were still where they needed to be. The elevator dinged like a gunshot. Heads turned. From the opening doors stormed a tall man in a tailored coat, his face ashen beneath a flush of panic. His eyes scanned the lobby until they found her, the crumpled figure on the floor, a tangle of limbs and wires and worry. Violet. David McClellan, CEO of McClellan Transit, was not known for emotion. Not in quarterly briefings, not in public statements, not even at funerals. But now his voice cracked like ice under weight. He rushed forward, shouldering past the medics, dropping to his knees beside his daughter. What did you do to her? His voice rose, trembling. What the hell have you done? Behind him, like a shadow in a borrowed uniform, Bill Hart arrived, breathless and eager. I tried to stop her, sir. I told her to stay at her post. She disobeyed orders, interfered with the medics. She what? McClellan spun toward Nadine, fury tightening every line in his face. Who are you? He demanded. Who gave you the right? And then Violet breathed. A full breath, shaky but unmistakable. Her fingers twitched against the cool tile. A nurse let out a sharp gasp. McClellan froze. He turned slowly, as if unsure whether his mind was playing tricks. Violet's chest lifted again. Color returned in faint strokes across her cheeks. The silence was complete. Then one of the medics, the young one, let out a breath. She saved her, he said, his voice cracking. She saved her. Kincaid echoed louder now. That's Dr. Nadine Carter. The room didn't move. I don't understand, McClellan murmured. Kincaid stood straighter. His eyes were locked on Nadine with something between awe and anger at the world that had forgotten her. Dr. Carter was the best thoracic surgeon in Memphis before some politics and lies buried her name. I interned under her 15 years ago. I watched her do things other doctors wouldn't even attempt. If she hadn't stepped in just now, your daughter wouldn't be breathing. McClellan looked at Nadine, his face unreadable. Behind him, Bill took a step forward. She went rogue, sir. She's just a guard. I told her to stay out of it. You told her to stand by while my daughter died? Bill opened his mouth, then shut it. The old paramedic turned to McClellan. With all due respect, sir, I'd think real hard before I believe a man who's more upset about being disobeyed than he is grateful his boss still has a daughter. McClellan looked down again. Violet's eyes fluttered. She let out a weak moan, then settled. The tension in his shoulders broke. Slowly he rose, walked over to Nadine. He extended a hand, not to accuse, but to steady himself. You saved her, he said softly. Nadine said nothing. A murmur ran through the room, then a single clap, another. And soon, cautious, uncertain applause filled the space like light cracking through storm clouds. Nadine didn't move, but something in her gaze had shifted. Not pride, not triumph, just the quiet knowing of someone who, for the first time in years, had been allowed to do what she was born to do. The stretcher rolled gently across the lobby, wheels whispering against the polished floor. Violet was stable now, eyes half open, hand resting lightly over her stomach. One of the paramedics walked beside her, murmuring soft reassurances. David McClellan followed in silence, then stopped halfway to the elevator. He turned back. The crowd had thinned. Some employees returned to their desks, whispering in huddles. The receptionist dabbed her eyes behind the counter. Bill Hart stood off to the side, arms stiff, face pale and unreadable. But Nadine stood exactly where she'd been, in the same uniform, the same shoes, the same quiet posture, though nothing about her presence felt small anymore. McClellan walked to her slowly, each step measured. "I owe you more than I can say," he began. "You saved my daughter when no one else could. Not the guards, not the medics, not me." She didn't reply. There was nothing to add. "I didn't know who you were until just now," he went on, "but I've since learned more than I care to admit." He paused, then took a breath. "Our company's partnering with the city hospital to launch a new community medical center on the south side. It's modern, fully equipped, still hiring. We've been struggling to find someone capable, someone who can lead with more than just credentials." He looked her dead in the eye. "I want you to run it." The words dropped like a stone in a still lake. Nadine blinked. She didn't move, didn't breathe. "You'd have full authority to build your own team," he added. "Whatever equipment you need, whatever staff you trust, I'll make it happen. Salary won't be a concern. Neither will public opinion." Silence. Somewhere behind her, the security monitors kept blinking, life continuing in grainy black and white frames. "You don't have to answer now," McClellan said, voice softer. "But something tells me you never really left the work. They just took the hospital away from you." He gave a small nod, turned, and walked toward the elevators, joining his daughter. Nadine remained standing. The uniform felt tighter suddenly, not from size, but from meaning. She looked down at her hands. They didn't tremble. They hadn't all day. And she realized it wasn't shock that left her speechless. It was recognition. Recognition of a truth she had tried for years to bury under routine and low expectations. She was never just a guard. And the work, the real work, had never stopped calling her name. The smell of antiseptic and fresh paint lingered in the air. Clean, sharp, full of promise. Sunlight spilled through the high windows of the new McClellan City Wellness Center, catching on polished floors and brushed steel fixtures. Nadine Carter walked the main corridor, her white coat swaying gently with each step. A name badge rested against her chest. Dr. Nadine Carter, Chief Medical Officer. She paused near the nurse's station. A young RN nodded to her with a grin. "Morning, Doc." Across the hall, 2 techs pushed a cart of supplies. One of them, graying, kind-eyed, gave a little wave. It was Calvin Myers, a respiratory therapist she hadn't seen in over a decade. She'd called him first when McClellan told her to build a team. "You really pulled us back together," he'd said on that first call. "Didn't think I'd ever see the day." Now, they passed each other in the hallway like old friends, not ghosts. Farther down, she heard laughter from the break room. Familiar voices, familiar rhythms. It was quiet here, but alive, not sterile, not cold. This place was more than new drywall and funding. It was something rebuilt, something reclaimed. She stopped outside one of the patient rooms. Through the glass, a young mother held her newborn to her chest, head tilted in quiet awe. A nurse adjusted the IV, then stepped back, letting the moment breathe. Nadine watched for a second longer, then turned to go. Back in her office, spacious but uncluttered, a stack of charts waited on her desk. Before she sat, she looked out the window. From this angle, she could see the downtown skyline. Somewhere below it all was the old security office in the McClellan building. She knew who was there now. Bill Hart had taken the night shift 2 weeks ago. Nobody said much about it. No ceremony, no announcement. Just a quiet reassignment. He didn't speak to her the day he handed in his badge. He couldn't meet her eyes. She didn't need him to. Some things didn't require revenge, just distance. Nadine sat down, opened the first chart, and began reviewing labs. Her fingers moved confidently across the page, and somewhere inside her, quiet but steady, was the feeling she thought she'd lost for good. She was exactly where she was meant to be.